Have you ever pulled a plant out of your garden without knowing its name just because it looked like a weed? I have done that too. And only after years of gardening did I learn that some of the most valuable plants that exist, edible, medicinal, and rich in nutrients, grow exactly like that, uninvited, unplanted, appearing out of nowhere in the middle of the garden. We pull them out and throw them away. Today, here on Garden Without Secrets, I'm going to show you 7 plants that most people consider weeds, but that are actually far more useful than they seem. Some are edible, some are medicinal, backed by serious scientific studies, and one of them, which I'm saving for the end, was considered for centuries one of the most nutritious plants a human being can eat. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. The button is right down below. But before we get to the list, there is one concept that can completely change the way you look at your garden.
What is a weed, really? A weed is any plant that grows where it was not invited.
It is a definition based on human convenience, not a botanical category. Nature does not have weeds. Nature has adapted, resilient plants that found ways to thrive in conditions where other plants would not survive. Many of the plants we call weeds grow in compacted, poor, disturbed soils, precisely because they have developed, over thousands of years, the ability to survive where others give up. And that resilience often comes with a high concentration of bioactive compounds, vitamins and minerals that carefully cultivated plants rarely reach. The plant that fights to survive is often the most nutritious one. Let's get to the list. And remember, the 7th one is the most surprising. First, the dandelion. The dandelion is probably the most well-known weed in the world.
That plant with jagged leaves, a yellow flower, and that little bouquet of seeds shaped like a white sphere, the one we blow on and watch fly away. In backyards and gardens all over the world, it is pulled out automatically, without a second thought. But the dandelion is completely edible. Every part of it, the leaves, the flowers, and even the roots. The leaves have a slightly bitter taste, similar to escarole, which we talked about in the video about rare crops to plant in May here on the channel. When young, they can be eaten raw in salads. When older, they can be sautéed with garlic. The flowers are used to make a traditional European drink called dandelion wine, and they can also be added raw to salads as edible decoration. The roasted roots can be used as a caffeine-free coffee substitute with an earthy and slightly bitter flavor. Nutritionally, dandelion leaves contain more vitamin A than carrots and more vitamin C than tomatoes. They are rich in iron, calcium, and potassium. And there is one detail about dandelions that very few people know. They are an excellent indicator of compacted soil. When they grow in abundance in a garden, their deep, fleshy roots are piercing and loosening layers of soil that cultivated plants cannot reach. It is the same job done by forage radish, which we talked about in the video on green manure seeds here on the channel. The dandelion is not destroying your garden, it is repairing your soil. Second, nutgrass. Nutgrass is one of the weeds that irritates Brazilian gardeners the most. It grows in almost every type of soil, comes back every time it is pulled out, and seems impossible to eliminate. But nutgrass, whose scientific name is Cyperus rotundus, is a plant with more than 3,000 years of documented human use. The underground tubers, those hard little balls attached to the roots when you pull the plant out, are edible and were used as food by populations in Africa and the Mediterranean for centuries. In the traditional medicine of several cultures, nutgrass has been used to relieve cramps, regulate the menstrual cycle, and treat digestive problems. Researchers have studied the compounds present in the tubers, especially sesquiterpenes, because of their anti-inflammatory properties. To use the tubers in the kitchen, harvest them, wash them well, and roast them in the oven until they become crispy. The flavor is slightly sweet and earthy, similar to nuts. They can be eaten that way or ground into a gluten-free flour. The reason nutgrass is so difficult to eliminate is exactly the same reason it has survived for so long. Its roots form a dense network that can regenerate from any fragment left in the soil.
Instead of wasting energy trying to destroy it, many experienced gardeners learn to manage it by harvesting the tubers regularly and keeping the population under control. Third, purslane. Purslane is a creeping plant with small, succulent leaves and reddish stems. It appears in gardens, pots, and cracks in sidewalks during the warmer months. It is one of the most drought-resistant plants that exists because its succulent leaves store water, just like aloe vera, which we have also talked about here on the channel. And it is completely edible. The taste is slightly sour and mucilaginous, with a texture that resembles okra when cooked. It can be eaten raw in salads, sautéed, or added to soups. It is a valued ingredient in Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, and Asian cuisines. But what makes purslane truly special from a nutritional point of view is its concentration of omega-3 fatty acids. It has the highest concentration of omega-3 among all known land plants. It is not fish omega-3, but the plant form of this fatty acid, alpha-linolenic acid, which the body can partially convert into the more active forms. A plant that grows out of nowhere in your backyard with more omega-3 than any other land plant, and most people pull it out and throw it away. Have you ever seen purslane in your garden without knowing its name? Tell me in the comments. It is much more common than it seems, and now that you know the name, you will start recognizing it everywhere. Fourth, beggar's tick. Beggar's tick is that plant with yellow flowers and little hooked seeds that stick to your clothes and to animals' fur. Anyone who has a dog knows how much work it takes to remove those hooks from the fur after a walk. But beggar's tick, whose scientific name is Bidens pilosa, is one of the most studied medicinal plants in Brazilian flora. Its leaves and stems have antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties that are well documented in scientific studies. Beggar's tick tea is popularly used for liver problems, urinary infections, and as a general anti-inflammatory. The young leaves are edible when sautéed. They have a slightly bitter flavor that becomes much milder with heat. In some regions of Brazil, especially in the countryside of Minas Gerais, sautéed beggar's tick is still prepared by older generations who learned to value this plant before it was reduced to the category of weed. The hooks that bother us so much when they stick to our clothes are the plant's seed dispersal strategy. It uses animals and humans as carriers to reach new territories. It is an ingenious evolutionary solution, one we complain about, but that nature developed with great efficiency. Fifth, pigweed. Pigweed, also called wild amaranth, is a close relative of the amaranth we talked about in the video on the 7 grains here on the channel. And like amaranth, it is an extraordinarily nutritious plant. The young leaves of pigweed are edible when sautéed. They have a flavor similar to spinach and contain high levels of iron, calcium, and vitamin C. In African and Afro-Brazilian cuisines, especially in Bahia, pigweed is used in traditional dishes, such as okra caruru, a stew served during festivals dedicated to the Orishas. The seeds of pigweed, like those of cultivated amaranth, are rich in protein and can be cooked like a grain or ground into flour. They are tiny, but each plant produces them in large quantities. Pigweed grows in disturbed soils and abandoned land. It is one of the first plants to colonize places where the original vegetation has been removed, playing the ecological role of covering and protecting exposed soil. It is a plant of recovery and resistance, appearing where it is needed most. There is something important I need to say. This different way of looking at the plants around us, recognizing value where most people only see weeds, is exactly the spirit that has guided this channel since the very first video. And for those who want to go beyond these discoveries and create a complete garden at home, the guide, My First Potted Garden, a beginner's guide for small spaces, brings everything together in an organized way, with a simple shopping list, a complete step-by-step plan, and a 30-day calendar. To get your copy, just click the first link in the video description. Now, back to the list. There are 2 plants left, and the 7th is the most impressive one. 6th, Mexican tea. Mexican tea, also called worm seed or Chenopodium ambrosioides, is a plant with a strong and distinctive smell. It grows in vacant lots, along sidewalks, and in gardens all over Brazil. The intense smell pushes most people away, but anyone who knows the plant understands that this is exactly what makes it useful. In Brazilian folk medicine, especially in the northeast, Mexican tea has a long-established use as a natural dewormer and as an aid in treating respiratory problems. Tea made from the leaves is used to help expel intestinal parasites, and scientific studies have confirmed the anti-parasitic activity of compounds present in the plant, especially ascaridole. The young leaves, in small amounts, are used as seasoning in some regions. Their intense flavor resembles a combination of lemon balm and mint. In culinary doses, they do not represent a risk, but like any medicinal plant with active compounds, using it in large amounts or in concentrated preparations should be done with guidance. It is one of the plants on this list with the longest documented medicinal history in Brazil, and one of the most ignored by people who pull it out automatically without knowing what they are eliminating. 7th, plantain. We have reached the 7th plant, and here I need to pause for a moment before continuing. Plantain, whose scientific name is Plantago major, is so common in gardens, sidewalks, and empty lots around our homes that most people have seen it hundreds of times without ever paying attention to it. Oval green leaves with very visible parallel veins, low-growing and close to the ground, almost as if the plant does not want to grow. It is exactly this discreet appearance that hides one of the longest and richest stories in the relationship between human beings and plants. Plantain is one of the most universally used medicinal plants in human history. It appears in medical records from ancient Greece, Rome, medieval China, 10th century Europe, and among the indigenous peoples of the Americas. In practically every human civilization that documented the use of plants, plantain appears. Its traditional uses are consistent across cultures and across thousands of years. Crushed leaves applied to cuts, burns, and insect bites. Leaf tea used to relieve coughs, bronchitis, and throat inflammation. The mucilage produced by the seeds when they come into contact with water, similar to psyllium, used as a digestive aid and gentle laxative. And science confirms a significant part of these uses. The leaves contain aucubin, a compound with documented anti-inflammatory and wound-healing activity. The seeds are rich in soluble fiber, which improves intestinal function. Leaf extracts have shown antimicrobial activity in laboratory studies. But the detail that surprised me most when I learned about plantain was this. It is not native to the Americas. It came from Europe with colonizers, unintentionally, on the soles of shoes,
in the mud on animals' hooves, and in seeds mixed with grain transported on ships.
It spread through the Americas so quickly and so completely that North American indigenous peoples called it the white man's footprint, because it grew along the paths where colonizers passed, following the steps of colonization across the continent. A plant that followed the history of humanity around the world, that grows silently in every garden, every sidewalk, and every neglected piece of land, and that has more than 2,000 years of documented medicinal use, is still pulled out by most of us without a second thought. Let's recap the 7 plants to close. 7 weeds that deserve respect before being pulled out. Dandelion, completely edible and a natural soil loosener. Nutgrass, with edible tubers and ancient medicinal use. Purslane, with the highest concentration of omega-3 among land plants. Beggar's tick, studied for its antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory properties. Pigweed, a relative of amaranth, with nutritious leaves and protein-rich seeds. Mexican tea, a natural dewormer with a strong place in Brazilian folk medicine. And plantain, the plant that followed the steps of colonization around the world and has 2,000 years of medicinal history. None of these plants needs to be cultivated. They arrive on their own. What changes is the way we look at their arrival. Tell me in the comments which of these 7 grows in your garden or on your balcony. And if you have already used any of them, share your experience here. And if you still haven't subscribed, the button is waiting right down below. Every week there is a new video made calmly, carefully, and without complication. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Take care of your little plants with love and without rushing. See you in our next video. A big hug.